Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'm so happy to see you guys here today. We're going to start by singing some songs. I'd love it if you would stand up and sing with us. The night is falling, when evenings come, still you're calling me. My game is lost, my hope exhausted. You will be my strength. When my mind says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. Yeah, I've decided I'm not giving up. You won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on, it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo. Come on, your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo, echo in my soul. In every season, you keep repeating promises to me. Whoa, now there's no stopping what you have started till it is complete. When my mind says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. Yeah, I've decided I'm not giving up. You won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo, echo in my soul.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to Encounter Church. We're glad each and every single one of you are here. Are you glad to be here? I mean, listen, you got some great music being led for worship. You're holding coffee, some of you. If you didn't, next week you can bring coffee in here. Just I want you to know that, all right? If you spill it, we will personally hand you a vacuum or something to clean it up, or I don't know, vacuums don't clean up coffee. We get the idea. Bring coffee, have fun. We're glad that you're here. If this is your first time, welcome to Encounter Church. Would love for you to take an opportunity as you get to know us. We want to get to know you. Download our app. We've designed it for you, so that way you can follow along in the message today. You can tell us how we can pray for you. There are also some neat things that you can do to engage with us. EncounterChurch.com/app. We'd love for you to download that. The other thing you can do is fill out the connection card you received just a few moments ago when you came in. Later in the service, you can put that in the offering basket that's passed around the room. In just a few moments, after we sing a few more songs together, our pastor's going to come and bring us a great message that we believe that God has for each and every single one of us today. So, thanks for being at Encounter Church. You ready to sing a few more songs together? All right, let me try that again. This is not rhetorical. Help me out here. Are you ready to sing a few more songs together? All right, let's sing a few more songs. Thanks for being at Encounter Church.
Not good enough, God, you're enough for me. Come on, put your hands together. I've decided I'm not giving up. You won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo.
And now I'm ready for whatever you want to do. I'm moving forward to follow after you. And now I'm ready for whatever you want to do. Sing with me. Your presence is an open door. We want you, Lord, like never before. Your presence is an open door. So come now, Lord, like never before. Put your hands together. Every season, your grace has been enough. And I'm believing the best is yet to come. Lost before me, I hope on things above. And in you, Jesus, the best is yet to come. Your presence is an open door. We want you, Lord, like never before. Your presence is an open door. Come now, Lord, like never before. All right, let's have some fun. We serve a great God who can bring us through anything. And this next section is talking about having a breakthrough. I know breakthrough is coming, and by faith I see a miracle. My God made me a promise, and it won't stop now. I know breakthrough is coming. And it won't stop now. I know breakthrough is coming, and by faith I see a miracle. My God gave me a promise, and it won't stop now. I know breakthrough is coming, and by faith I see a miracle. My God made me a promise, and it won't stop now. Oh. Your presence is an open door. We want you, Lord, like never before. Your presence is an open door. So come now, Lord, like never before.
spin their dance within your breath. Time runs its race within your hands. My mind runs wild to comprehend. No mind on earth could understand. Your ways are higher, your thoughts are wilder. Love came like madness, poured out in blood-washed romance. It makes no sense, but this is grace. And I know you're with me in this place. Here, now, still my heart, let your voice be all I hear. Now, fix my eyes on the things that I can't see. Now, Spirit, breathe, let the wind come everywhere. 'Cause I know you're in this Faith makes a fool of what makes sense. Grace found my heart where logic ends. When justice called for all my debt, the friend of sinners came instead. Your ways are higher, your thoughts are wilder. Love came like madness, poured out in blood-washed romance. It makes no sense, but this is grace. And I know you're with me in this place. Here, now, still my heart, let your voice be all I hear. Now, fix my eyes on the things that I can't see. Now, Spirit, breathe, let the wind come everywhere. 'Cause I know that you are here. Now, still my heart, let your voice be all I hear. Now, fix my eyes on the things that
Good morning. Welcome to Encounter Church. I don't know about you, but that video stresses me out. I'm sitting here and I'm like, I am so stressed right now. But isn't that life? I mean, that is life. And I'm so excited to be kicking off this series. The next 2 months, I think is going to be really, really good for us. We're getting ready to dive into a series called Spent that then turns into the Beginner's Guide to Future, on creating the future that you want to have, not the past that you've already had, right? And so these two series back to back, I think, are going to be really powerful for us. I want to begin with a story of a Slovakian bridge, because I think this bridge in the bridge naming experience essentially kicks off this idea that's at the heart of why we utter this phrase spent. In 2012, there was a bridge naming competition. There was a new Slovakian bridge that was going to open up in this small little village. And so they opened it up to the townspeople to say, hey, give us the name, because we want to name it in a way that's going to mark this territory. And this big, beautiful bridge was getting set. And as the entries were coming in, it climbed to over 13,000 entries. And 12,947 of them all had the same name for the bridge. And only 400 of them had alternate names. And so the bridge was all but named. The name that they had chosen was the Chuck Norris Bridge, because in the country at the time, the biggest kind of phenomenon was Chuck Norris. They loved Chuck Norris, his old like Walker Texas Ranger shows, and his old shoot 'em up like manly, masculine kind of bravado just grabbed the Slovakian people. They absolutely loved it. And so they wanted to name the bridge after him. And the government officials were in this awkward place of, we can't name our village bridge after Chuck Norris. We'll be the laughing stock of the world. And so they ended up naming it the Freedom Bridge to commemorate a moment in their kind of history with the communist regime before. And what the story illustrated was when they were sitting around planning that idea, they're like, how do we create energy around this bridge? Let's let the people name it. They had no clue that when they started that floodgate opening up, that what would come out of that was the Chuck Norris Bridge. And I think that in so many ways, life kind of comes to those similar places where you find yourself in an unintended place that you never set out to arrive in. And I think when we find ourselves saying that phrase, I don't know if you've ever said that phrase. I said that phrase this week. I'm just spent right now. I'm just so spent. And for some of you, you may be saying it right now in your finances. For some of it, you may be saying it emotionally. Some of it, you may be saying mentally in the midst of preparing for finals in school. But we all have this moment in our life, or places in our lives, where, if we're being honest, we're in danger of saying that phrase, I'm just spent right now. And I think that the answer to how we got to that place and how we get out of that place is very much tied to the Chuck Norris Bridge. It was an unintended consequence. We set out on a journey not realizing where it was going to take us. And today, because of baptism, I want to kind of give you a little bit of an introduction without kind of launching into all the nitty-gritty and the details of how to get out of it. But I want us to kind of come to a place today where we recognize that there is a way forward that doesn't leave you spent. And in kind of a shorter introduction, I want to kind of introduce you to the next 5 weeks of this series called Spent. To get there, I want to go to another story, a story that Jesus told that's perhaps one of his most famous stories. If not the most famous, it's at least the second most famous story that Jesus ever told. It's the story of the Good Samaritan. And it's a story that at the time was kind of a little bit scandalous, because Jesus makes the hero of the story someone that everyone hated. There was a backdrop at the time. There was some political tension. There was some racial tensions behind the story of the Good Samaritan. Jason referenced the app, and so I'm just going to read that story to you real quick so that you kind of refreshed, or if you're new to the whole Christian experience, you can hear it. And then I'll unpack a little bit, and then we'll jump into what's its implications for this life that we find ourselves experiencing spentness in. It says in verse 29 of Luke 10, kind of set the backdrop, there was this guy who's saying to Jesus, teacher of the law, he's like, Jesus, I've got a question. How do I, so I know I'm supposed to love my neighbor as I love myself. That's the second most important command, Jesus. But who is my neighbor? That's the question that sparks the Good Samaritan. Because the theological hot button issue with religious people at the time was, who's the neighbor that you're supposed to love? And so Jesus, hearing the question, launches into the story of the Good Samaritan. He says, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and that's an intentional use of the word down, because Jerusalem was about 1,500 plus feet above elevation of Jericho, and it was a quick decline. This wasn't a gradual slope. This was a pretty steep, winding path. It was dangerous back then because this path essentially winded you down through valleys, and there was crevices and cracks in the rock where robbers would hide, which is why you see when he was attacked by robbers. This was a common news story of the day. So Jesus is using something very familiar with these people, and he says that they stripped him of his clothes, they beat him, and they went away, leaving him half dead. Their intention was not for him to live. They had beaten him to a point that they've taken everything, and they've walked off. So their desire is he's going to die, and they've gotten away. And it says a priest happened to be going down the same road, and when they saw the man, he passed by the other side. Now, you have to realize, when people first heard a priest, they would have naturally assumed, oh, we know how this story ends. The priest is going to help the guy. But he doesn't. And then he says, so to a Levite. And they're like, oh, okay, the Levite's going to help. The priests were the elites. They're a little self-consumed. All right, the Levite, they're the like second class elite. So they're going to help. And nope, they pass by on the other side too. And then Jesus utters this statement, but a Samaritan. Now, if you've grown up here and you're an avid Boston Red Sox fan, you instinctively know that to be a true Red Sox fan isn't just that you love the Red Sox, it's that you equally hate the Yankees. And something inside of you knows that when the word Yankee is said, you are supposed to kind of boo under your breath, or if you're at the game, or in front of your television, you say whatever you want. You have a free pass, right? And so this is the reality of the life here. When people hear Samaritan, they know they have a free pass to boo, hiss, and say whatever they want. Because it's this kind of level of animosity. And Jesus says, but a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him, and he bandaged his wounds. He poured on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey. He brought him to an inn, and he took care of him. The next day, he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense that you have. And then Jesus says to the man, which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robber? And this guy at this point is kind of squirming. He's like, oh, man. And it says, the expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. He couldn't even say Samaritan. He hated him that much. He couldn't even say, well, the Samaritan was the one who did it. He's like, oh, that guy. The guy, who was nice. And Jesus says, go and do likewise. Now, this story has inspired so many people throughout human history. It's literally the name of laws that exist in almost every single state in our union. It's the name of countless hospitals. Jesus used this story as a rallying cry and a picture of what does it look like to be the church and to live people regardless of who those people are. To love people regardless of who those people are. But I don't want to go the path that we've gone before with the Good Samaritan, because I think the answer to this idea of spent is actually happening around it. And to tease it out, I want to tell you another Good Samaritan story. So in 1973, a couple of researchers had this idea. Sociologists and psychologists like inventing slightly bizarre experiments, if you spend time reading it in that world. And one experiment they had was, what if we recreated the Good Samaritan story, but we did it with seminary students? And so they went to a seminary, a pretty famous seminary, in fact. And they recruited 65 seminary students, and they were told, in the course of the experiment, we're going to be gauging your communication. We're going to actually ask you to speak. Here's an outline. We want you to teach on the story of the Good Samaritan. And it's going to be in a building across campus. And so after you do the talk, we'll evaluate it and we'll give you your response. And so in the course of the kind of signing up, giving the outline, talking through it a little bit, they were broken into two groups and they didn't know it. The first group was told, the researcher would look at his watch and say, you know what, you got plenty of time right now, but if you want to go onto the building and just sit outside, they'll call you when it's time. The other group, the researcher was to look at their watch and say, oh my goodness, you're already late. You've got to get across right now. They've been waiting on you for 5 minutes already. And those two groups were then dispensed and they left. And what was interesting was when it was all said and done, the group did not know that in the middle of the campus, on the way, someone was there, an actor had been hired to feign being in pain, like really obvious, loud pain, and to kind of see how much attraction would people who are talking about the Good Samaritan story actually have in the process. Now, a majority of the people who were on their way, who were not in a hurry, stopped to help the person who was physically crying out in pain. The other group, the ones who were in a hurry, only 10% of those group actually stopped to help the man who was crying out in pain. One literally stepped over the guy on the way to go do a talk on the Good Samaritan. I mean, how funny is that? It's like, get out of my way, I'm going to go talk about helping people. And I think it's the Good Samaritan, the Good Seminarian story that gives a little insight for us living today and the barriers that we have in the Good Samaritan story. You see, I think what ultimately that experiment revealed is that at the heart of often the lives that we don't want to live, there is a disease that haunts us. It's the disease of hurry. And that hurry robs us of far more than we realize. And hurry has some unintended consequences that we don't realize when we first sign up to embark on that journey frantically. Pacing, pushing, and living beyond our limits. You see, I think at the heart of hurry is a lie. A lie that maybe you and I have never even thought about before. That to get the most out of life, we have to add more to life. That to get the most out of life, I need to add more into my life. And I think this bears out in our culture. We are living in a day of overload. You think about it. Marie Kondo on Netflix, Tidying Up. I don't know if you've ever watched that show. I get stressed for those people. But then I go and I open up my desktop and I need Marie Kondo to come to my computer folder system. Right? I mean, we live in a day and an age where we are just as guilty. We laugh at people on the televisions, but we mirror their lives in other places in our lives. We are people, I like TED Talks. I'm a bit of a nerd, which if you've been coming here a while, you've probably figured that one out. Or if you're here for the first time, just the start of this message probably already reveals that, from Chuck Norris to a psychology experiment in 1973. But I digress. So I like TED Talks. And the thing that blew me away this year, it was like literally an out-of-body experience for me. Because one of the TED Talks this year was on sleep. Now, a TED Talk is supposed to be like humanity's brightest, newest, revolutionary thoughts. That's what a TED Talk is intended to be. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, are you kidding me? A TED Talk this year is on something that my mom told me to do when I was 3 years old? Like, that really is humanity's best idea? And I was sitting there like imagining if other animals in the animal species, they would be judging us right now as a species, because they're like, are you kidding me? These people don't realize that, like, they think sleep is a profound idea. And it is right now, because we're overextended. the average American doesn't get enough sleep, and we're literally dying in various areas of our life because we don't get enough sleep. And we don't even realize we're living in an age of overload. Did you know that there is more information in the New York Times than, so one edition, the Sunday edition of New York Times. So if you went and picked it up today, you could hold it. You would have more information in your hand than a 17th century British citizen would get their entire life. So a 17th century British citizen, their entire life, they would be exposed to the same amount of information that you could go spend $2.75 or whatever it is today and hold in your hand. I had this experience a few weeks ago. I sit down because I had this like rare moment where I didn't have anything to do. And I sit down and I'm like, I'm going to watch Netflix. And I open up Netflix and I spend 15 minutes trying to find something to watch. I'm like, how is there nothing on this thing to watch? And I'm like just scrolling, mad. It doesn't help that my wife loves, like, how do I put this? Because, Netflix names it like, if you like this, you like this. And so Netflix says that, oh, perhaps you would enjoy this British drama with strong female leads. And it's usually like a historical British drama with and I'm like, I don't want to watch any of that stuff. Like, give me something good. And I'm like scrolling through and there's nothing to watch. We have more information. YouTube adds 300 hours of video every single minute of the day. 300 hours. There are more books printed this year than you will be able to read your entire life. This year. Printed. We're exposed, overwhelmed, overlimited, overwhelmed. And I think what happens is living in an age like this, the unintended consequence is it leads to that. You feel spent. Because this is a new, modern problem. Humanity has never been exposed to what we've been exposed to. I mean, like I go all nostalgic, and which I swore I never would become. And I think back to when I was growing up, like there wasn't as many sports programs available as there are today. There wasn't as many after-school programs as there are. There was not nearly like my mom didn't feel the pressure to expose me to so many things to set me up because the world was kind of steeped in competition. Like we had 3 channels. And that was if you licked your finger and you held the antenna the right way and your brother's leg was stuck out, right? I mean, like we didn't have that much going on. But we've kind of woken up in a world that's running at a pace faster than we even realize. It's like when I go to the gym, this is really embarrassing, and I start running. And as I'm running, if I notice the person beside me is running faster, I'm running 2.5 and they're running 7, but I think I should be able to run faster than them. And so I'm like, I'm just warming up, beep, 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 beep. And then I'm like holding on to dear life. Why? Because one of the things that happens is we watch other people living their lives and we get sucked into the pace that we see them living. But we never ask, hey, do you have any flexibility? Are you spent? Because they would say, I'm spent too. I'm spent trying to keep up with you. And you're like, well, I'm spent trying to keep up with you. Because we get in this war where we take our cues from what's going on around us. And the unintended consequence is we wake up one day and we're just spent. And this is how you know you're in a place where you're spent, is there are a few things that start to happen when you're living your life in this kind of state of being. One is your stress levels go up drastically. I mean, some of you experienced this morning. You experienced your stress level go up because your time had already been spent. You needed to get to church. Your kid decided at the last minute they wanted to wear something different, or they had to go to the bathroom now, or the breakfast wasn't right, they needed a little bit more, or your husband or whatever wasn't ready yet. I mean, just something little that all of a sudden sucks away the margin you have, and now you're in the car, you're screaming at the kids, you're arguing with each other, and you're like, we're going to church, we're supposed to be happy right now. And then you walk in and you're just like, you finally sit down and you got your cup of coffee, and this is like the first time in the entire day that you're like, whew. And then you watch the bumper and you're like, are you kidding me? That was my morning. This is insane. And this is this life that we find ourselves in when our margin goes down and we're living our life in this unintended consequence of the world called split. Our stress is up. Our like adrenaline rises to the top. We're fight or flight, and we're ready for it. And then what happens when your stress level goes up and you get into fight or flight is naturally you start to become self-consumed. I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing. That's what happens as a consequence of fight and flight kicking in. You're self-consumed. Stress is a painful emotional and mental experience. So you're both self-consumed, fight and flight, and you feel pain. Which is why, in those moments, extreme emotions are really easy emotions. Right? I mean, the small thing you used to celebrate, your kid, I mean, there was a point in your life where you would have paid $1 million for your child to finish that plate of food, and now you're ready to throw that plate through the window with them attached to it because they're making you late. Because it's easy to react in the extremes. We blow up. Or we do the opposite. We implode and we get discouraged and we're depressed. When we're in those places, we get extremely reactive. And we find ourselves distracted. You're at home and you're thinking about work. You get to work and you feel guilty about home. And you just live with this dance. Your calendar feels like a prison sentence. You can't enjoy the meeting or the people you're with because you're trying to focus and trying to think about the next thing. And so you find that you can't enjoy anything. You don't want to go on vacation because if you go on vacation, you know you're only going to come back and have more work. Because work didn't stop when you left. And then it ultimately leads to a pandemic in an American society where many American workers don't take their vacation days, they don't take their sick days, and they constantly build up. Because, man, if I go on a vacation, I'll only be more tired. Or we do the opposite. We go on vacations, and in the extreme, we so overload those things, we come back and we're like, man, I need a vacation from my vacation. Right? This is what a life that's spent looks like. But I think the most tragic part comes in on that third piece is where your relationships begin to suffer. Because when you're living that style, when you're living that way, you have no emotional margin, no time margin for intimacy, for deep, rich conversations. So I'm a self-confessed efficiency fanatic. Okay, I love anything that makes me just a little bit more efficient. I use Evernote. Everything in my life flows through Evernote, which is a note-taking app. Right as of a day or two ago, I think I was at 13,539 notes in my Evernote. Right? I mean, I am constantly obsessed with how do I squeeze a little bit more efficiency out of email? How do I I listen to audiobooks at 3.5 their normal speed. It doesn't even sound like a language. It sounds like a cassette tape being fast forwarded. And that's how I listen to audiobooks. Because I love efficiency. I love being able to get more information. I want to read more books this year. I want to learn more this year than I've ever learned before. And yet, I have this constant tension in my life that my relationships don't tend to be really good candidates for efficiency tweaks. You can't make a relationship efficient. If you want to have effective relationships, it's the very opposite of efficiency. Fortunately for me, God's gift to me was two ladies, one named Jenny, who is my wife, and one named Ella, and both of them daily remind me that love moves at a pace far slower than I naturally do. That if I want to love them well, I have to downshift into first gear. Because both of them spell love T-I-M-E. Both of them enjoy the rich, deep conversations. I mean, if you've ever pulled up beside Jenny or I in the car, probably like you, and you look in the back seat, she's talking. She doesn't stop talking. She falls asleep talking. She wakes up talking. She loves to talk. And it's so sweet and tender. And and fortunately, like I said, I'm a dunce, so I needed very clear. But when she was little, if I wasn't paying attention, she would grab my face with her little hands, and she would turn her head, and she would move my head to look in her eyes and say, "Daddy, I'm talking to you." And I'm like, "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I will stop doing what I'm doing. What do you want, boo?" I mean, it took, I look at my life and I live with this constant fear that I could run past them and not even know it. Because in my pursuit of in my pursuit of pushing more into my life, what I could start to experience is less. Because the lie is if I want to get the most out, I just need to get more in. And yet, it's not true. And if I'm not careful, I find myself doing this where I try to borrow from my future that I don't have and give it to people in my present and say, well, it's only a season. It's just a busy season. Well, the busy season's been going on for 4 years. I know it's a long season. But the season eventually, then we'll go on that trip. Or then we'll go on that date. And that we'll borrow from our future. And we bribe the people in our present with this future that we don't have. We have no promise of it. And we'll try to bribe them with it. And that's the danger of buying into the lie that to get the most out of life, you've got to put more into it. But what I love about the Good Samaritan story is it actually shows something. It shows us from a distance, as an example, that there must be a different way. Because if the Good Samaritan story had happened today, what Jesus would have told was there were 3 adults all walking down the street staring at their smartphone, and they didn't even notice that the guy was injured or hurt. Right? I mean, that would have probably been the modern version of that story. That, or maybe perhaps someone took a video of that guy and said, saw this poor guy suffering on the side of the street, we should do something about it. Hashtag, let's help a man out. Right? And then they kept on going, hoping it went viral and that guy got some help. But the Good Samaritan shows us that there's another way, there's a better way, there's a different way. And that different way is to realize that you can't give what you don't have. And that in order to get the most out of life, it's not found in the pursuit of more. It's found in the pursuit of intentional less. That it's the intentional less in my life that actually gives me the most in my life. One of the words that I use for that is the word margin. Margin is essentially underspending the energy, the time, the resources you have. Underspending it intentionally so that there's a gap between what you're living and the limits of your life. And the difference between how you're living and the limits of how you can live, that little gap is called margin. And this was something that was deeply, deeply ingrained in God's people. If I had time this morning, I could walk you through Old Testament passage in different ways, from their finances to their time, to their resources, to their abilities. God was constantly speaking and forming a people in the Old Testament and then reinforced in the New Testament that margin is to be the mark of a life well lived. Margin is the way that we can step into situations and circumstances and not explode and not blow up and not be overextended. The Good Samaritan, the only reason the Good Samaritan story happened is because he had margin. Think about it. It says that when the Good Samaritan saw him, he took pity on him. The Good Samaritan had emotional margin. I don't know about you, but when I'm exhausted, when I'm emotionally spent, it's really hard for me to have compassion. It's really hard when my daughter is weeping in front of me and I've had a stressful day. It's really hard for me to care. Let's just be real. When you are spent, you don't care as much about the people around you. You do, but you don't have anything to give them because you can't give out of what you don't have. And the Good Samaritan, he had emotional margin. He had space to give pity to a man. He had an ability to feel something inside that moved him. He had financial margin. He gives bandage and oil and wine. He gives him his own clothes. He's living not at 105% of his income. He's living less than what he makes in order that he is able to expend that margin on people who need it. He's able to be generous because he had financial margin to do it. You cannot be generous if you do not have margin in your finances. I mean, the most stressful conversations my wife and I have ever had, and I'm going to guess it's probably true of you too, is around money when you don't have enough of it. Isn't that like the most, like if you want to ruin a good date, go to a nice restaurant and say, I printed out our budget. I wanted to talk about it. Guaranteed to kill whatever mood you thought. You go ahead and stop Barry White. You go ahead and turn that off because it's going on CNBC and WWF at the same time. It'll kill it. And yet when you have financial margin, you can have a flat tire and you don't freak out. Or I read a story earlier this year where this family had been saving up money and they had a $1,060 debt, and they had finally saved it up. They'd cashed it out, and they put it in an envelope to go deliver the debt to be paid off. And it was sitting on the side of the table, and the mom walked through the living room, and it was gone. And so they're like frantically looking around the house, searching the car, and over the course of the weekend, they keep looking, they can't find it. And then the mom notices that the shredder is a little fuller than normal. So she picks up the shredder and she opens it up, and there is her $1,060. Her little toddler, who had been helping her shred all those mail pieces that come in, saw an envelope, assumed mommy must want this one shredded. I'm going to be a good helper. Shred, 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 shred. And shredded $1,060. And so, they're frantically trying to figure out, how do we deal with this? They call the Treasury Department. They're like, good news, we take those bills and we'll refund you the money. Yeah, it's a really simple process. It only takes 1 or 2 years for us to do it. Now, if you have no financial margin, you may be tempted to shred your toddler. Right? And I'm reading that story and I'm like, so much of how I would have responded to that moment would have really been reflective of how much margin I had. Because when you have margin, when you are saving for those moments when you know your car is going to break down or you know someone's going to get hurt, when you have that margin financially, when you have that margin emotionally, when you have that margin in your schedule, you can start to live your life differently because you refuse to participate in the lie that the most is found in life by adding more to it. And this series really is about us waking up to the fact that maybe God has more for us and it's found in less of us and what we do. And that I know for some of you, I may freak you out even with this idea of margin. And that you're too busy, you're too overwhelmed, you're too financially overextended. Which is why I'm not asking you to do anything today, but to answer 2 simple questions. And if you're willing to answer those 2 simple questions, if you're willing to lean into that, then in a couple weeks, we're going to circle back up in the course of this series, and I'm going to invite you into a 6-week journey. A 6-week journey for you to start finding margin. Because imagine you arriving early somewhere. Early. Or imagine you having enough time that even when you hit traffic, it's not the end. Imagine that you actually have time in between your appointments to think about the previous one and to be prepared for the next one. Imagine you working hard, still doing a great job at work, but still being able to be present when you walk through the door because you saved some emotional, mental energy for them when you got home. Imagine you having enough finances that you actually have a savings account and you don't freak out when the unexpected happens. Imagine your life when your relationships are starting to flourish in the beauty of what margin was meant to create, of intimacy and rich and deep conversations. See, here's what I know about all of us. We may be freaked out in the journey to margin, but we all all hunger for the other side of it. Because the best in life is not found by trying to get the most, by putting more into it. It's actually us being brave enough to start pursuing the less. And in doing so, our lives begin to change. So here's your 2 questions, and then we're done. Okay? So you may want to put these in the notes. You may want to write them down. If you don't want to do either, that's okay. Make me feel better and pretend. All right? So here's the question. First question. Where are you currently living beyond your limits? You don't have to ask your better half beside you, because you may not want to hear that answer yet. You may not want to ask your kids. But if you want to be brave, maybe you should. But where are you currently living beyond your limits? And then 2, where are you currently adding more into your life and experiencing less? Okay? These 2 questions are meant to uncover some of those places in our life where margin would make the most difference. So where have you bought the lie? Where are you adding more, believing you're going to get? Where are you adding more, but actually experiencing less? And where are you currently living beyond your limits? And don't let anyone see those answers, but come back next week. And then the next week. And then over these next 2 months, if you're willing to listen online, join with us. I think what you will find at the end of this 2-month journey is a life beginning to be filled with better decisions and fewer regrets. Let's pray. God, thank you. Thank you for the way that you care. Thank you for the way that you, in your wisdom, created us to be people who have margin in our lives. Thank you that you're a God who, when you created us, gave us a snow day every single week through the Sabbath. That you're a God who called us to live our lives with the intentional less, knowing that it leads to more in our life. And so help us, give us wisdom, give us discernment, give us guidance, even as we kick this series off, to answer those 2 questions honestly, and to believe with hope that there is richness, there is life, that you desire for us to have the most out of life. And help us to imagine us with the emotional energy that we could grieve our losses, with the financial energy that we could be generous and make a difference. Thank you for the vision of the Good Samaritan story, of a life that was saved because a man had margin in his life. And so help us to bump up against your love, your grace, even as we wrap up our time together here. And it's in your name, Jesus, that I pray. Amen. I want to thank you for being here today. We close out every single week at Encounter Church through a song. And it's a little different today because we're actually going to be celebrating baptism as well. But before we move on to celebrating what God has done in the lives of the people who are going to be baptized today, we want to stop and pause to give you time to reflect on those 2 questions in your life today. And I recognize for some of you, you feel so overwhelmed, so overloaded. You look at the mountain in front of you and you think, there's no way I can climb it. There's no way we could ever be financially free. There's no way that I could ever have emotional margin. There's no way that marriage could ever be as rich and as deep as you claim. And I get it. But see, what I'm saying to you today is not predicated on some bald-headed guy telling you some information. It's that this bald-headed guy happens to be a messenger to invite you into a journey that I did not create. A journey that he intended for you. One that would give you life, fill your life with peace and joy and hope, no matter what you are going through in life. That's not my promise, that's his. And so the song that we're going to close out this moment with is a new song. It's a song called Breathe. And it's a song that invites us to imagine that maybe there's a little bit more, that maybe if God stepped into our circumstances and that we begin to step out in faith in this journey towards margin, that we might experience even more margin than we could ever imagine. That in the invitation is an invitation to peace, hope, joy, love, kindness, gentleness, all of those things that we think other people can have that we can't. And during this time, you'll also see some of our team members moving around. We realize that for some of us today, you're maybe in financial situations where you're overextended, or maybe you're here today and you have some emotional struggles you're walking through and you would love for us to pray with you. We use this time also so that you can fill out the app and the prayer request, so that we can step into your journey, whether that's looking at your financial situation with you, or whether that's praying for you in your current situation. For those who haven't downloaded the app or prefer the other version, we give you a piece of paper when you walked in. You can tear that out and you'll see team members moving around in a few minutes, and you just drop that in the basket. And that helps us step into the journey with you. And then you'll also notice in the midst of that, if you're new here today, that people are passing a basket around, and that there are some individuals putting money in, or maybe giving through how our family does through the app. And it's just for you to know, we believe in financial margin in our lives, not so that I can drive a nice car, not so that I can live in a big house, but so that the church can be what that Good Samaritan story demonstrated, that the church should be known for what it is able to do for the community, not what it takes from it, that we recognize that generosity is not about us, it's about what God can do through us and for those who need the benefits of generosity. And so for those who call Encounter Church home, you're sitting around people who are the most generous people in the world, because they've bought into that idea. Because we all believe that God can do more through us when we start to partner with Him. And it begins with margin. And so you'll notice some of that. If you're new here today, the only thing we really want from you is how we can step into your journey and be a demonstration of that Good Samaritan story for you. And so I invite you to stand. The band's going to lead us, and then we'll come back up in a few minutes and pivot to celebrate what God has done through baptism. Let's sing.
It shows our God is true. There's a song rising from the valley. It's our response to you. 'Cause you are God, the God of all creation. The earth groans and longs to be with you. And where we are, our hearts are raised to heaven. We breathe to worship you. We stand in awe, faces shine with wonder, made pure by perfect blood. What better way to give you all the honor than to bow before the one? 'Cause you are God, the God of all creation. The earth groans and longs to be with you. And where we are, our hearts are raised to heaven. We breathe to worship you. You are God, yes you are God, the God of all creation. The earth groans and longs to be with you. Where we are, our hearts are raised to heaven. We breathe to worship.
So, you can have a seat. I'll make it a little easier for you. And so we're getting ready to participate, to celebrate baptism. And I don't want just to assume, because I know we come from so many different places at this church. And so I wanted to give you a little bit of like a 2-minute kind of overview so that you know what baptism is. Because if not, it can be confusing. You're like, why are they being dipped in like a horse trough or something that's painted orange? That's a little strange. Yes, it is a little strange. The original equivalent was the Jordan River. Unfortunately, it was unavailable today, so we had to kind of deal with this. So, we'll just kind of work with that. So let me explain a little bit of what baptism is. And I talked about baseball earlier, so let me just use this baseball illustration of how at Encounter Church we understand baptism. Now, heads up, any analogy is always a bad analogy at some point, so don't take this too far. So we want to kind of say, okay, what's the spiritual life look like? Spiritual life with a baseball diamond is this. We believe first base is that moment when we say you turn from the life that you were living and you turn to God, trusting that what he did through Jesus is enough. So it's this turning and trusting in Jesus. This choice here is what makes you a Christian. To be a Christian, literally the word Christian, originally came up as a derogatory term. It meant to be a little Jesus. And this idea that you were following Jesus so closely that people would mistake them for being little Jesuses. So they started calling them little Jesuses, and it stuck in the language. And then by the time it got to English, it was Christian. And so this idea that what makes us a Christian is a choice that we've turned from our old life, we're turning to God, that this idea of repent is that literal turning, and that we're trusting that what Jesus did on the cross, what happened in the resurrection, changed our lives. That's first base. That's how you get started in this whole thing called the Christian life. Now, the second base is baptism. And this is what we're about to celebrate here. And then the third base is growing in that faith. Because one day we believe there's a moment where we go home to heaven, right? And so now, if we were at the Red Sox game yesterday and somebody hits the ball and they run to second base, right? We would all be like, no, go to first, right? That we would all be screaming that. And so we know that like the answer in baseball is you go to first, and then you go to second. Because we believe baptism is not, being baptized does not make you a Christian. Okay? It's just getting wet without soap. It's not even a good bath. Okay? And so, I mean, just theologically, when we look at the New Testament, which is where we get our cues from, we see an invitation to turn and trust in Jesus. And then, because this is largely an invisible act, this is largely an invisible step, what God has done, what God did to help us is he created this ritual called baptism to give a physical symbol to something internally, invisibly that happened, right? And so I like to use the wedding band as an illustration. My lovely wife did not just all of a sudden feel single because I took this ring off, right? She's not like, hey, I'm a single now, right? She's still married to me. If I take this ring, I actually lost my wedding band for about 5 years of our marriage. I was not a single man when I didn't have it. This just represents a choice that I made. It's a physical choice that tells all 3 billion women of the world, I'm taken. I've already said yes to someone else, so I'm going to have to say no to you today and every day of my life, right? It's a physical symbol to the world that I've made a commitment to my wife. And we believe baptism is a physical symbol that says we've made a commitment to Jesus. We follow him with our lives. We've gone step 1. We've turned to step 2, which is the natural progression. And we're being baptized today to show it. And which is why we say we celebrate baptism. Because it's sometimes hard to see this step, but we get to celebrate in this moment first and second base. We're celebrating the double. okay? Because we're like, this is a double today. There are two amazing things happening right now in this water. And so the 6 people that are going to be baptized today, that's what we're doing. You're going to hear us clap and cheer because we believe something invisible that has very visible effects has occurred. And now there's a chance that some of you are here today because we've already had some conversations and people have said this, that maybe you've already taken this step and you never taken this step. Or maybe you're here today and you're, because I've also had these conversations, you're a little confused. You're like, wait a second, I just heard you say that when I was little, I ran to second base first. Are you saying I did it wrong or my parents were wrong? No, I'm saying that when your parents did it, your parents did not do that to you to get you on base. The parents did that for you, like me as a parent, with the intention, with the prayer, with the hope that one day you would have a faith that was vibrant and alive later in life. Right? Because when you're a baby and you're dunked under water or you're sprinkled with water, like, your parents know and you know that you're not making the choice, the parents made the choice. And so no, your parents didn't make a bad decision. I'm not saying that. What we believe is baptism is at best a personal decision that follows this one. And so it's okay if when you were little, you were sprinkled and your family celebrated that moment. They celebrated that moment and hoped that one day you could experience this type of moment where your life was overflowing, where you were experiencing the love, joy, and the peace that God has promised each one of us through his son, Jesus. And so if that's you and today you want to be baptized, we're not going to let you jump right in, okay? So don't worry. But in the app, there's literally a link that you can click that says, hey, I have questions or I'd like to know more about baptism. If in the midst of this moment, I would encourage you to reflect on your own journey and to carve out that moment. So with that said, we're going to celebrate a little bit what God has done. If we had time, we could go through and talk through each one of the stories. It's amazing. God is still transforming lives today. And that's what this water is going to physically represent. It's representing the invisible parts of the stories that you don't know. And so, clap, cheer, take pictures, holler, celebrate. This is a good day. And to get us started, Jason is actually going to come out and he's going to begin to baptize our first few people.
Welcome. So glad that we're going to celebrate this time together. Everyone put it together. Put your hands together for Shannon. Come on out, Shannon. Just last week, I was talking with Shannon, and she said to me, as she gets ready to be baptized, she said, I think I'm ready. And I asked her a few questions. I said, because of your faith in Jesus, you are ready. Now, listen, Shannon has a shirt that says, God is dope. I haven't told you this, but you need to tell me where you found that shirt, right? Her faith, even wear that shirt. I love that. I don't know what kind of cool conversation Shannon's had that has a shirt that says God is dope, but I need one of those, right? She has a faith in Jesus Christ already, and today is the day we're going to baptize her, as Chris said, and this is a visual representation of what God has already done. Shannon, it's a joy to baptize you today. And as you get ready, know that today is just a symbol of what Jesus has already done in your heart. So it's my joy to baptize you in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. All right. Lisa, come on out. Everyone give it up for Lisa. Keep your hands together. Lisa has been coming to Encounter for about a year now. Now, by the way, let's just say something. Their shirts that they're being baptized today, they don't say God is dope. That would be cool. Maybe that's the 2020 baptism shirt. They say my best decision. And the reason they say that is I told them this morning that this is the best decision that they've ever made, was to follow Jesus with their life. And Lisa's watched the last few baptisms. She works on our production team in the back. And she said the last couple of times, hey, I think I want to be baptized. And she told us again today, hey, I'm ready. I want to be baptized. So Lisa, it's a joy to baptize you today. We're all celebrating with you. So let's put our hands together as we baptize Lisa. It's my joy to baptize you in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Wow. All right, Aaron. Come on out, Aaron. Everyone, this is Aaron DeRoma. Good. All right. Aaron, this is your first time in a food trough, isn't it? It's your first time here, right? Aaron has been coming also to Encounter for a little bit less than a year. And Aaron has had faith in her life for a very long time. But these last couple of months, she's even made it public to us and to others that, listen, I'm really following Jesus, and I really want to be baptized as a symbol to show the world. So she and I spoke this past week, and today, Aaron, is the day we'll celebrate forever. I told her even, remember, this is just a symbol. You're already following Jesus, but this is what God's done in your life. So it's my joy to baptize you as a sister in Christ in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. So one of the joys that we have is not what just happens in this room, but what happens outside of this room. And the next person coming on stage, I'm going to invite him. Dallas, come on. Dallas is one of the reasons. See, I haven't even said anything, and you're clapping because you know Dallas. Dallas is one of the reasons why people love to come to Encounter Church. Dallas leads our elementary, and he's our children's coordinator. And what happens outside of these walls and these kids' rooms is nothing but amazing because of Dallas and his leadership. And so I'm not going to introduce this next person. I'm going to let Dallas do that because he deserves this introduction. So Dallas, thank you for your ministry here, Sunday in and Sunday out.
I want to bring out one of my best friends in the whole world, my second-born son, Davis. Come on out here, buddy. So from the moment my children were born, I've taught them and gave them the same message that we give your kids every single week, that 2,000 years ago, God was on earth as a man named Jesus, and that he lived a perfect life. And he died on a cross, and he came back to life, and he's alive today. And if you believe that you are saved from your sin forever, and that one day you get to be with him in heaven forever. But one thing I've never told my children is, it's time. You need to do this. You're at a certain age. It's time. Because they know it's their decision. And that's between them and God. And a few months ago, in January, Davis came to us, my wife and I, and he said, it's time. And so I'm so excited to be here. This is a representation of Davis letting us all know that he is a follower of Jesus, that he is saved, and that he will forever be with Jesus. And so we are thankful for that. Davis, my brother, it is my privilege to baptize you in the name of the Father who loves you, the Son who died for you, and the Holy Spirit which now lives in you. I baptize you, buried with Christ, raised to walk in a new life.
It's just an amazing thing. Each one of these people have a story about God stepping into their life just like he stepped into this planet. And that the hope is that no matter where you are, no matter who you are, none of us are beyond God's step into our lives. There is no grief that we've experienced. There is no path that we've walked down. There is no choice that we've made. There is no mountain that we've climbed that goes beyond his grace, his love, and his pursuit. And so I get the privilege of baptizing two more people who I wish we could just sit and talk about their stories too, because God is at work in each one of these ladies' lives. And so the first one, Donna Moscato, is going to come out. Donna started attending here a little over a year ago. And what I love about Donna also serves in our toddler area, and it just makes a difference on Sundays in there. But I appreciate Donna's honesty. I remember one time she told me the first time she ever came, like many of you, let's just be honest, the first time you came, you're like, this music, this place is a little different. I'm not sure about it. And I remember her walking up to me after one of those Sundays and saying, but you know what I've felt every single week I've ever been here? I felt hope. And I just love that this gets to be a place of hope. And it's in that hope, the hope found in Jesus, that I get to baptize you, Donna, as a sister in Christ, in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, buried with Christ in baptism, raised to walk in the newness of life. Woo! The next lady that is being baptized is Jerry Herman. Jerry, you can come on out. Some of you may recognize Jerry because you see her lovely smiling face when you walk here on Sunday mornings. And we were talking just a few days ago just about the fact that she gets to be a face of hope and a face of love and smiling and warmth and invitation as you walk in on Sunday morning, because what's been happening on the outside that you experience is what's been going on the inside of her life, of God beginning to draw her, to show her how much she's loved, of how he is still in the midst of transforming lives. And so the warmth that you get on Sunday mornings is the afterglow of what's been going on inside of her heart and her life. And like every single person, I wish we had time. They probably wouldn't like the microphone, to be honest with you, but for you to hear the story of what God's doing is incredible. And it's because of that story, it's because of what Jesus has been doing, stepping into your life as you've been stepping through life, that it's my privilege to baptize you as my sister. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, buried with Christ, and raised to walk in the newness of life. Woo! That never gets old. It never does. This is why I love what I get to do. This is why so many people serve on Sunday mornings. It's because we believe hope is alive even in hopeless situations. And that love still reigns even when hate feels like it's pressing in from every side. So we're going to wrap up. We're going to sing. We're going to go right back into that song and pick up on the declaration that the hope that's found in Jesus that caused this water to be stirred can still be stirred in our hearts long after we've come through this moment, because he has promised to be with us, to stay with us, to walk with us, to strengthen us in every single season of our life. It's his whisper, his words that still bring hope in life today. Let's sing.
Stillness, I can hear you whisper, calling deep and deeper still. The same voice that moved upon the waters says, come drink and have your fill. Sing that with me. In the stillness, I can hear you whisper, calling deep and deeper still. The same voice that moved upon the waters says, come drink and have your fill. Come on. Says, come drink and have your fill. You are God, the God of all creation. The earth groans and longs to be with you. Where we are, our hearts are raised to heaven. We breathe to worship. You are God, the God of all creation. Come on, sing with me. The earth groans and longs to be with you. Where we are,
so much for joining us here at Encounter Church. Can we just have one more round of applause for those who are baptized today?
We got him. Yeah.
If you have questions about who we are, about today's message, or even questions about baptism, we would love to hear from you. Please do stop by Starting Point on your way out. And also, if you haven't yet already, please, we have our worship and communion night tonight here at 6 p.m. We would love to just worship with all of you again. In regards to child care, we are at capacity, but we do hope that you return here tonight, 6 p.m. to worship with us some more. Thanks so much, and see you next week.